right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. May I have a motion to return the regular board meeting to public session, please? Thank you, Dr. Lemon, Ms. Kazmarek-Bogner. All in favor? Carries unanimously. I call the regular board meeting to order. All board members are present. Dr. Singh, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Be advised that in the event of a fire emergency and an evacuation should be necessary, an alarm will sound. Please note all marked emergency exits and evacuate well away from the building. At this time, we request that everyone turn their cell phones and other electronic devices to silent. And face coverings must be worn at all times when in the building. Thank you. Before we move forward with our agenda, I would like to ask that we hold a moment of silence for one of our staff members. Gino Cavelli was a technology teacher, most recently assigned at High Middle School, who passed away on January 31st. As a board, we offer our condolences to Mr. Cavelli's family, friends, students, and colleagues, and we will honor Gino Cavelli with a moment of silence at this time. Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Thank you, Dr. Singh. Mrs. Beeger, second. Any discussion, please? All in favor? All hands up equals unanimous. Thank you. We are now moving on to acknowledgements. And Dr. Brown-Hall, I turn it over to you for our school spotlight.
Thank you very much, President Leatherborough. So tonight we continue our school spotlight, highlighting the great work that goes on within our buildings. This month, our school spotlight focuses on Country Parkway Elementary School and two of their universal pre-kindergarten classrooms. I'd now like to welcome Principal Andrew Bowen to share the importance of having the UPK program now on site within the district. Principal Bowen.
Thank you, Dr. Brown-Hall and Board of Education. Good evening.
Good evening.
It's my honor to be here to showcase Country Parkway. This evening, we highlight a pilot program that is held in our building, as Dr. Brown-Hall mentioned, Universal Pre-Kindergarten. This year, we did add 2 UPK classrooms with 40 students, having the opportunity to welcome these students and provide them with a solid foundation in literacy, math, and social growth has been remarkable. Special thanks to UPK teachers, Mrs. Tracy Kosis and Mrs. Danielle Bickert, for spearheading the program, making it thrive, and most importantly, providing an environment where our students are encouraged, nurtured, and challenged. We are going to have a UPK presentation for the board later on in the evening. But before we do that, we have our communications team put together a video that gives us a sneak peek into UPK at CP. Thank you so much.
Wheels on the bus go round and round, round and round, round and round.
Country Parkway has been a school where we have really taken pride in early intervention and meeting students' needs. And for us to start that even a year sooner has always been a goal of this building, to be able to impact our learners before they even start kindergarten. Our UPK teachers are absolutely phenomenal. We are completely blessed to have 2 incredible teachers and 4 aides that have created a program and started it, and it is absolutely flourishing due to all of their hard work.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
The best part of my day is seeing all my kids every morning come into the classroom. They're excited, they're ready to play, they're eager to learn. Our students have opportunities every day to interact with their peers, to grow socially, to grow emotionally, to engage in lots of hands-on activities. And we've seen a huge amount of growth from each child, which is really great to see. Our program is crucial to laying the foundation for preparing our kids to enter kindergarten with all the skills they need to be successful and to have a great start to their school career.
She has just like leaped forward since she started this program. Who she was when she started compared to now, it's pretty amazing how much she's learned in those 5 or 6 months. She's done really, really well. We obviously reinforce things at home. We read at home, we review stuff at home, but knowing that she's getting those couple hours at school where she really is learning, it's been just really great for us. It was just the idea of being in like a Williamsville district elementary school. You knew that quality was going to be there and that she would be more than prepared for kindergarten, really.
Opal, octopus, and orange.
I love to come to school every day. I love to be the one that's like giving them new knowledge and helping them learn things that they don't know. It's so amazing. It gives you as a teacher the motivation to continue to come back every day. When you start a child on a learning path and you start them understanding that they can learn and that they're competent, that gives them an advantage when they come into school. So I think it's incredibly important that we start them at this UPK age. We're developing in them the capacity to understand that they can learn, they can be successful, and school is a safe place for that to happen.
We were so excited when we found out that Charlotte was going to be in a UPK program that was in an elementary building in the district, because preschool, the purpose is to prepare you for kindergarten, right? But if you're at universal preschool in the district where you're going to be going to kindergarten, then those teachers already know what is going to be expected for kindergarten. And so I feel like she definitely knows more letters and numbers, I think, than either of my older kids did going into kindergarten. She clearly loves it, and she's clearly learning a lot. And I have no doubt that she's going to be prepared for kindergarten.
UPK at CP has been an absolute success, and that is due to all the efforts of the people who are involved. And that would be all the way from our superintendent right down to our teachers and to our aides. They really have, everyone has come together to create something pretty special, and we're really proud of it.
Thank you very much, Principal Bowen. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Principal Bowen. Are there any board acknowledgements? Ms. Bogner?
Yes, in January, with the support of their gifted programming specialists, all 4 middle schools sent teams to the Western New York Future City Regional Competition. This year's theme involved using principles of a circular economy to design a futuristic waste-free city. This intensive STEAM project requires a project plan, city essay, presentation video, city model, and slideshow. And I'm happy to announce the first place winner was Transit Middle School's Team Moranis Builders, who will now advance to the national competition. The second place winner was Mill Middle School Team Nova Sol. And in fourth place, Team Casey Cougars. Plus teams from all 4 schools were honored with special awards. So I want to congratulate them all for their hard work and achievement.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Other board acknowledgements? Dr. Singh.
I have a couple actually.
Go ahead.
This weekend we had a different kind of Olympics. We had the Science Olympics, and the 400 students from local schools took part in the Lake Erie Niagara Division C regionals on Saturday. And the 4 of our school teams came in the top 10. And 2 schools, Williamsville East and Williamsville North, they came second and third, and they will be moving on to the state tournament in Syracuse in a month.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
I saw that on the news.
One other thing was what Dr. Brown already mentioned. There was great performances in Williamsville East for the Unity and Diversity programs on 2 days, on Thursday and Monday.
Mhm.
And the students put in a lot of effort, and though I didn't get a chance to see the whole program, I saw the highlights on YouTube.
Yes, it was phenomenal. It really was.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. Anyone else? Just piggybacking on the diversity piece of it, on Sunday, I saw Dr. Singh at UP, and I understand that Superintendent Brownhall was there as well. And I just wanted to thank June Wang Tiedman and the Chinese Club of Western New York, and they hosted the All Heritage and Lunar New Year celebration. It took place Sunday at the University of Buffalo. And this year they invited all members of the board, which I thought was very kind of them. And they opened it up to other heritage groups as well. So there was a Hispanic group that performed, and there was an Indian group that performed. And I thought that that was really special because here it is, you know, their special day, their Chinese Lunar New Year celebration. And they really took that DEI and focused on the inclusion piece of it, not just celebrating their own, but making sure that others were able to come in and celebrate as well. So I really appreciated that event. And several of our students and even some of our parents performed during that presentation. All right, if there's no more board acknowledgements, oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Littman. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. On behalf of my former Board of Education colleague, Gene Cavelli, and his wife, Sandra, they would like to thank Gino's fellow district technology teachers, the administration, students, and the Williamsville community for their support, compassion, caring, and love shown on the passing of their son, Gino, a longtime technology teacher at Heim Middle and at Mill. The impact of his character, professionalism, and caring will be missed.
Thank you very much, Dr. Littman. All right, I will now call on Ms. Kazmarek-Bogner to review our public expression format.
Thank you, President Leatherbarrow. Welcome to all who have come to observe this regular board meeting. Per Policy 1510, the board allows up to 30 minutes of public comment, a time when we invite members of our school community to share ideas, opinions, and concerns with us. While we are here to listen carefully and we take your concerns seriously, public comment is not designed to be a discussion. Therefore, please do not expect us to respond tonight. Instead, you will receive a response by email after our meeting. Because we want to maintain mutual respect and civility, please ensure that comments are delivered in a respectful manner to the board directly. Also, under state and federal privacy laws, we are unable to entertain any comments related to employee personnel information or any topic that may disclose information about a particular student. On these matters, we ask that you go through the appropriate administrative channels. Please note that individuals are required to sign up prior to our meeting. Each speaker is allotted 3 minutes for comments and will be signaled at 2.5 minutes to conclude remarks. And at this time, I will begin public comments. After I call on you, please step up to the podium and state your name. Our first speaker this evening is Elena Pope.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Elena Pope. I am the parent of 2 middle school students. And I would like to bring up something that I consider very important in regards to the controversial Spanish assignment given to 6th graders in Middle. As we all know, the information quickly spread all over the news and social media, and the rumors also started with the middle schoolers at an even higher speed. My children came home every day with a new opinion, new rumor. They heard from someone else, and they asked numerous questions, including what is a union, was the teacher fired? While as parents, we try to explain the situation to the best of our ability, I strongly believe that it's also important to be addressed in school and to communicate to the students, to the extent possible, real facts and what measures are being taken. This is equally important to stop the spread of misinformation and also use this as an educational opportunity. Children are offered great education in our schools, but I think we fail them by not being open with something so important that happened in our own backyard, and by not making them involved in the thought process of what we do as individuals and as a community to prevent future situations of this kind, and also how to react when they happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pope, for your comments. Our next speaker this evening is Jack Rafferty.
Good evening, everyone, and I'm sorry to hear about the recent loss, and congratulations to Principal Bowen on his new position. My name is Jack Rafferty. I'm here to address my concerns about masking young children. Since you're all concerned about following the science, here are some facts I've gathered. A cohort study on 184 children in Italy from ages 6 to 18 revealed adverse data in the post-pandemic numbers compared to that of the pre-pandemic numbers on social media use and addiction concerns. The survey revealed that due to social distancing measures, it led to a significant increase in overuse and addiction, also leading to many clinical, sleep, ocular, and musculoskeletal disorders, psychological distraction and modification, loss of interest, and social superficial approach to learning, isolation, unfavorable outcomes. Coming from the CDC directly, in 2015, a study was conducted to compare the efficacy of cloth masks and medical masks among healthcare workers in Vietnam. Rates of infection were consistently higher among those in cloth masks group than the medical mask and control groups. I'm just saying, if you're telling children to cover their faces all day without the scientific evidence to back it up, then it's clear that it's never about public health. Masks are now symbolic in that it keeps everyone's identity hidden, and that there's absolutely no evidence to back up why little children should be wearing masks. Why do I bring these studies up? I'm not here to compare what type of masks children should wear or should not wear for 8 hours a day. I'm talking about what is the likelihood for children to actually spread COVID-19. The likelihood is very low. I'm sure you know that. What I'm saying more importantly is the masks are not necessary for children, and they're beginning to learn how to communicate and read facial expressions with their teachers and their parents. These children are not living in a normal childhood because of these measures, and frankly, you bear the responsibility of all the suicides, the overall destruction of adolescent mental health, and the inability for children to properly communicate with what they need to their parents and to their teachers. Additionally, parents are absolutely the primary decision makers of their children's education. We pay your salaries, so I expect you guys to do your jobs. The parents make the decisions here. Do you think it's right to teach children to never question authority and always obey what they're told, no matter how ridiculous the rules may be? Children know that something is wrong here, and there are students all over the country that are recognizing this issue. I suggest you start putting your constituents first and your students first, quite frankly. If you want to help those, if you want to keep the board seats, to every student who may watch this, I encourage you all to say no to these ridiculous mandates put in place by leaders making blind decisions just because the authority says so. I encourage you to stand up for yourselves and to protest the authorities and to stand up for what is right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rafferty, for your comments. Our next speaker this evening is Tim Terrell. It doesn't appear that Mr. Terrell is here. Our next speaker is Amber, I believe it's Shasti.
Hi, my name's Amber Sastry. Yeah. I'm the parent of 3 children within the district. I recognize that the school district has many important priorities, including excellent academics, arts, extracurriculars, and wellness. I'm here to raise something that advances all of these, yet is often deprioritized, which is recess. Active outdoor free play has incredible benefits: exercise, fresh air, building friendships, blowing off steam, and coming back to the classroom ready to work. I applaud the district for having a recess policy at the elementary level, but I'm concerned that our students are not getting the full benefit. Often recess takes place in the classroom, so this does not enable children to move and interact freely. They need an opportunity to run and yell and climb and invent new games to play together. Our older children should have this opportunity too. You know, our 5th graders are at the middle school, but they're still little kids. They should have recess. All of our students should have free time to decompress during the day. It could be combined with lunch, but I'm afraid that's not happening now. I'm not sure what happens at each individual school. This is just general. I'm just speaking generally. In the winter, our children spend almost all of their daylight hours at school, and I know that the snow and cold can be difficult for teachers, but if we plan and prepare, even they could enjoy getting outside for a contest of who can throw a snowball the farthest or snowman building. Teachers are concerned that they can't get all the kids dressed in time during the 20 minutes they're allotted, but it disappoints me that we only have 20 minutes to begin with, and that we can't make space for our kids to enjoy some fresh air together. So I think we would all be healthier, happier, and even more academically prepared if we got outside most days. So I understand that the schedule is very difficult to manage. I just wish that we could see this as a priority and make the space and work together. You know, if kids need to bring in boots or mittens, you know, gloves, snow pants, you know, could the parents get together and organize that for the class, keep an extra pair at school, something like that. So I would also just like to express my gratitude for all of our teachers, staff, administrators, and board members. The school district has continued to give its all through all of this, and I'm proud to be a part of our community together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ashji. The next speaker is Tony, and I'm sorry, sir, but I'm unable to read your last name.
I was designated the mystery speaker. No, Tony Badami. It's good to see you. And my question really is, I mean, I watch TV. I've been watching this going on for a long time. And it's like I say to myself, what the hell is going on? I mean, I feel like I'm in Alice in Wonderland or something. You know, you hear, and then I'm listening to, you know, your weekly update, and I'm hearing diversity, equity, inclusion, it's all you hear everywhere, right? And then I'm watching TV, and you got a boy, and he's swimming against women because he says he's a girl. So I guess that makes him a girl. But the problem is, they say that's inclusion. And then I hear it coming out of our district's mouth, right? Inclusion, okay? You got 12 girls and you got one boy. Who's being excluded, okay? You know what? It might not be happening here, but look at what's happening. That's not good, okay? It's not good. Think about it. You people are running the show. You got to do something. You know, a lot of people know about this right now. It's going to turn on you too. You better turn this train around. That's what I see, okay? So you got diversity, right? So diversity, you got to make sure that you have a black, you know, I'm not pulling no punches. I'm not politically incorrect, and I'm not trying to offend anybody, but you got to have a black, you got to have an Asian, whatever. Can you imagine if we did that with the Buffalo Bills? So, well, you got to have one black, you got to have 6 whites, we lose every game. That's not how you run an efficient organization or a government. That's not how you do it, okay? That's diversity, right? If that's diversity, you really better look at it and you better get that crap out of diversity because it's not helping anybody. It really isn't. It really isn't. Our future's at stake. Our way of life's at stake. You people play a role in it. Really, you really do. You know, it's out of my hands, okay? But I see it going on. Then you got equity. What's equity? What is equity? It used to be equality. It turned into equity. What's equity? Equity is, well, you get the same thing, and he gets the same thing, and he gets the same thing, and he gets the same thing, right? Sounds like communism to me. But anyways, listen, you can work as hard as you want, and everybody gets the same thing. Now, listen, I'm not saying it's happening here, but what I'm saying is I'm watching this stuff on TV. I don't think these people are lying. And if all of this goes into that, I think we better really look at what we're doing because our futures, our way of life could be at stake. You know what I'm saying? These are our children. And I think a lot of the parents feel as though that their ability to raise their children are being stolen from the government. What does that sound like? Does that sound like America? Does it? You people make the decisions. People like us. We're an outstanding, okay, district. Whether or not you could say we're going to do it or not, maybe we should make a statement. Maybe we should say, we think this is the bad part of everything. You know what I'm saying? I'll leave you with this, okay? Tomorrow morning when you get up and look in the mirror, think about what I said. Because it's on you.
Thank you,
That's
sir.
all I got to say. Thank you.
And that will conclude our public expression. Thank you.
Great. Thank you to all of our speakers. We certainly support everyone's First Amendment right. We're going to move on to our consent agenda. May I have a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda items 6, 7, and 8, please? Ms. Speaker, thank you. Dr. Singh, second. Any discussion, please? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. The Board of Education extends its best wishes and gratitude to the following retiree for their service to the district: Barbara Walsh, South High School, for 20 years of service. Moving on to item 9, is there a motion, please, to approve the January 11th board meeting minutes? Thank you, Dr. Singh. Thank you, Ms. Kazmarek-Bogner. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor for approval? Thank you. Opposed or abstentions? One abstaining. Thank you. All right, motion does carry with one abstention. President's report. The New York State Education Department held a review of graduation measures in New York State virtual event, and that took place on January 27th. Dr. McCleary, Dr. Singh, Ms. Poulin, and Vice President Van Slice all attended. Does anyone who attended wish to comment on the event? Go ahead.
I'll just make a short comment. It was very interesting as New York State is really looking at gaining feedback from all stakeholders about the potential redesign of what our graduation measures should look like. You know, with the question, what do we want our students to walk away from high school with? What achievements or, you know, what skill set are we really looking at? More than, I think they're exploring more than assessments, which what we know with the regions, looking beyond that, truly some civic readiness as well as career readiness. So they're really trying to explore it, as we've heard that our state is one of the only ones that offers so many different graduation pathways, trying to hone in on what do we want our students to show and exemplify when they leave high school, so that we know that they can be productive members of the community more than just assessments, is my takeaway.
Thank you very much for sharing that. In other events coming up, Harris Beach is holding a seminar webinar on general education and special education related topics. It's going to be happening on Thursday, March 3rd. And so far, we've got Dr. McCleary, Dr. Singh, Dr. Littman, and Ms. Poulin signed up to attend that event. We did postpone our Conversations with Staff event last month. It was scheduled for South High School and the South Feeder schools. I was just in email communication with Superintendent Brown Hall earlier today, and we'll send out a date for March. And we will be keeping the East event that remains on April 6th. So we'll try and get the other one in between. I believe Dr. Brown Hall sent out a couple of suggestions and when he replied to all of our questions, and we can check to see which one of those dates works for all of us. Okay. I liked your suggestion that you gave about keeping it all on one date.
I think so.
Yeah, that makes more sense too, but we'll confirm that. We are going to be holding a community forum, and that's going to happen on March 22nd, 2022, after the budget work session meeting, which begins at 7 p.m. So we never know for sure how long the budget work session portion of the meeting will take. We estimate about an hour, so we can have an approximate start time for that community forum of 8 p.m. All right, we also have some school visits coming up tomorrow, actually. The board members of the board will be visiting Maple East and Maple West. And I will be attending along with Ms. Poulin, Ms. Kazmarek-Bogner, and Mr. Biscaglia. Dr. Littman, can you join us? All right, great. Thank you very much. All right. So item B under the president's report is the Erie County Association of School Boards, ECASB. They are holding a prospective school board member workshop, which will be for anyone in the community who is interested in possibly running for a seat on the school board. That event is going to happen on March 26th from 8 to 10:30 a.m. at Erie One Bosse's in West Seneca. You must register by March 22nd, and you can call our district clerk, Miss Lynn Carey, for more information, or you can call Erie One Bosse's and ask for the ECASB office directly and register there. Also, Dr. Singh and I both attended the budget and finance training. This was a virtual training that took place on Thursday, February 3rd. Rick Timms was the facilitator for this event. The topic was on long-range financial considerations, advocacy topics, and strategies for school boards. I did submit a report on that, and when we get to our budget and finance portion of our meeting, I do have a few comments and questions for Mr. Matursky related to that training. Moving on to our New York State School Board Association, upcoming events is also tomorrow is Lobby Day. This will be happening in the afternoon for us. We have school visits in the morning and lobbying in the afternoon. The New York State School Board Association is hosting Lobby Day in the partnership with the Erie County Association of School Boards. So tomorrow afternoon, Dr. McCleary, Vice President Van Cise, and myself will be meeting on Zoom with Senator Rath. The meeting is at 1 o'clock, and Assemblywoman McMahon at 3:30. And we will be sharing legislative issues that impact our students and our district finances. And I also understand that you will be having similar conversations next week.
I will, on the 18th of February with both Senator Rath and Assemblywoman McMahon.
Excellent, thank you. And even though tomorrow is an actual event, advocacy is not meant to be an event. Advocacy is meant to be a process that is always ongoing, and anyone can be an advocate. Is there anyone from the board that has anything they want to share about ECASB or New York State School Board Association that I skipped over? Okay. One other thing I can mention is there is a webinar coming up this Thursday. It's called the School Board's Role in Curriculum Adoption. And that's a free webinar for all school board members that are interested. So far attending is Ms. Kazmarek Bogner, Ms. Poulin, Vice President Van Cise, and Dr. Singh. So thank you to those board members for making time for that event. There are other dates from NYSBA that are available in board docs. All right. Item D, under the President's report, we just had Groundhog Day. However, the groundhog has no authority on our school board.
Right.
And spring is on the way in March, and with spring comes our annual district vote. So with that, may I please have a motion to approve and adopt the 2022 procedure and timeline for the election of school board members as presented in board docs. Thank you, Vice President Van Cise. Mr. Biscaglia, second. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor? All hands up equals motion carries unanimously. So now that we've approved the timeline and procedures, I'm going to ask our district clerk, Lynn Carey, to share some information about board candidate packets and our annual vote. Thank you, Ms. Carey.
Yes, you're welcome. Just a couple highlights on the candidate packets. They are available. I like to meet with the potential candidates just to go over the packet with them and very briefly and to answer any questions if they have any. This year, it's 84 valid signatures we need for the petitions. And once those are turned in and verified, that is when the candidate becomes an official candidate. In regard to the annual vote, it is May 17th, and it will be at North High School, 9 a.m. till 7 a.m. till 9 p.m. We'll be over there. And on the day of the vote, the poll inspectors who are from Erie County Board of Elections facilitate that vote. and we're going to have you present photo ID. And the process is real quick. Hopefully, again, this year, it ran pretty smooth last year. To be a qualified voter in the district, you have to be a U.S. citizen, 18 years of age or older, and a resident of the school district for a period of 30 days prior to the vote. And voters must be all of those, all of the above. And then the application for absentee ballots may be requested April 1st. And then military is also at that time to request a ballot for military absentee ballot. And then the budget vote, that's all set. Absentee ballot will be available for pickup or mailed out after April 21st. That way we have all the candidates on the ballot and the ballots need to be printed. So if you have any questions about being a registered voter in Erie County, it's on their website. Just type in voters and that'll come up for you to type your name in to see if you're a registered voter. Don't have to be a registered voter though to vote in our district. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I look forward to seeing everyone at the vote.
Awesome.
Thank you, Ms. Carey. Item G, Erie One BOCES call for nominations. So 3 board members shall be elected to serve on the Board of Cooperative Educational Services, First Supervisory District of Erie County, at the meeting designated by the BOCES Board President, which will be held on April 19th, 2022, to be held in each of the component districts. There's information in board docs about the incumbents and those seeking re-election. And I actually received a letter today in the mail from, I believe, a new candidate, Mrs. Carey. So I'll get that to you so you can put that in board docs or send that out for our school board members to be able to see. The Williamsville Central School District Board will make their nominations at the March 8th regular board meeting. So there's no action on this for tonight. Just know that at next month's meeting, we will be charged with the duty of nominating someone for the Erie One BOCES board. Okay. Any questions on that? Yes, Dr. Littman.
Comment. You know, for years, Judy Katz represented our school district on the board. When she retired and I was leaving the board last time, I put my name in nomination. I spoke to many school districts. I got a large amount of support to keep a person from Williamsville on the BOCES board. But for some reason, this board in Williamsville did not support me. And I think it's an issue that since we are one of the largest components and contributors to BOCES, that we should try to have a representative on the BOCES board. So my suggestion. I know some of these, I know these, you know, the people who are up for re-election, some of them serve on boards now. And, you know, I just want to bring that to your attention. It's something we as a board should look to the future to find a candidate who could represent Williamsville in that capacity.
Thank you for your comments on that. To my knowledge, I don't know of a Williamsville resident that's running for the BOCES board this year.
Yeah, so I'm just saying that we should be, you know, as we look at people who are looking for our school board, we should be also looking for people who might be willing to serve or one of us to try to get on the BOCES board. Many of you have wonderful experiences. Well, maybe it's time for us to make a return.
All right. Thank you very much. All right, that's all I have for my president's report. So Dr. Brown Hall, I'm going to turn it to you, and I'm going to ask you to address items 11A, B, and C.
Absolutely. And thank you very much, President Leatherborough. And we're going to, in the community update, we're about to have the PowerPoint show up. We are going to talk about many issues in the district, and the strategic plan is one of them. And at the end of the community update, I will give some highlights about the 22-23 proposed student calendar. Awesome. So the first thing we're going to talk about is Test to Stay. As you know, we launched our Test to Stay program in the district on Monday, January 31st. And parents were asked to fill out the consent so that if their child is unvaccinated and needs to participate in Test to Stay, that consent would be on file. So we have more than 570 consents on file for the program. And to date, we've had 44 COVID-19 tests administered with 1 positive test result. Now, the beauty of it is that we have 43 students that participated in Test to Stay and were able to continue in school without being quarantined. So they're able to continue with their instruction. So that is something that's one of our goals, right? To preserve our in-person classroom instruction. And that's what Test to Stay is doing. Now, we are asking parents, if your child is fully vaccinated, to please share that information with your school nurse. Because if your child is fully vaccinated and they are a potential contact to someone who is COVID positive, they do not have to quarantine, nor do they have to participate in Test to Stay. So it's really important that we get that updated information. At-home test kit distribution. So we've done a couple of these already. We had one distribution prior to returning from the winter recess. And then we had another one a couple of weeks ago out of the middle schools. We've gotten enough test kits this time to actually give every student 2 test kits to take home. So I want to go through the particulars of this. So the district is planning a COVID-19 at-home test kit distribution for students prior to the midwinter recess in February, allocating 2 test kits per student. Now, we're going to try something different this time, where parents and guardians can request a COVID-19 at-home test kit be sent home in backpacks on February 16th. So parents will have to sign up ahead of time on Wix, and so that will be available February 9th through the 14th. To request a kit is sent home with your child, so you will know that it's coming home the 16th, so you're able to look out for it. If parents or guardians do not request an at-home test kit be sent home in the backpacks, they will have the option to pick up the test kits from the district offices here on February 16th, 17th, or 18th. So if you don't want it to come home with your child, you can definitely pick up the test kits here February 16th, 17th, or 18th. And we encourage you, again, this is not mandatory, but we encourage you to pick the test kits up and make sure you use them prior to students returning from the midwinter recess.
Can I just ask a question on that?
Absolutely. Let me go back to it.
If your student is in high school, and this is gonna just sound silly, but it's honest. If your student is in high school and they already bring 2 full backpacks to school and they're probably not going to be willing to take home a test, are you just recommending that the high school parents just come pick them up?
Yes.
Okay.
Please. Absolutely. And we want it to be very flexible with the 16th, 17th, and 18th, the 18th being the Friday right before midwinter recess.
So they have the option to do both. It might work well if you have younger children to just request to go in the backpack.
Correct.
You want to be sure, you have older kids, you want to be sure you actually see the test kit.
Absolutely.
Go pick it up yourself.
You can come pick it up yourself. Absolutely, President Leatherborough.
Thank you.
For sure. Strategic planning. So many of you have already seen the strategic plan is in board docs for board adoption this evening. Now, the next steps, everyone. So what are the next steps now that we have a strategic plan? Well, that's half of it, right? The strategic plan, the outline of it. So now schools will develop strategic planning committees to develop their action plans during the spring and remainder of the school year. Now, what's important here is that when the schools develop their planning committees, they will develop a committee for each of the areas of the strategic plan, right? So we have teaching, learning, and leadership. We have a wellness section of the strategic plan, a communication section of the strategic plan. And the last bullet here, the DEI committees will be formed at schools as part of their strategic planning committees. And it's really important when we say DEI, I know there was talk of it this evening. I want to refer individuals back to the October 15th presentation that was done at the board meeting by Dr. Balin, Assistant Superintendent Scanzuzo, where we actually defined what diversity means, what equity means, and what inclusion means. I encourage everyone to revisit that so we have the same baseline, so there's no confusion about what we mean when we talk about DEI in the district. And to further that, so this is the template that will be available for every committee at every school. So this is an example, goal statement 2A, under the Wellness, Community, and Sustainability District Strategic Planning Goal, and the goal activity listed on the left. So now the teams at the school are able to fill in what their action steps are, the timeline, the persons or groups responsible, the resources or the fiscal impact, and the measurable evidence of success. So this will be individual for each school. Each school committee will own their areas of the strategic plan with the action steps that are specific to their schools. So when everyone asks, what are the next steps? These are the next steps for each school in each of the committees.
I just have a question.
Please.
So when you're talking about each school will have several committees for each one of these. Who will the committees be comprised of, and how will that be determined?
Right on cue. Great question, Vice President Van Cise. So the committees will be made up of stakeholders, right? So we will have parents that will be part of some of the committees. Teachers will be part of every committee. Administrators will be part of every committee, just so that we have everyone's voice and input in the strategic plan that is specific to that school, the action steps. Thank you very much for that question. Okay, sorry. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. So with the DEI committees being formed at each school, this is very important because representatives from the DEI committees will be members of the district-wide DEI team. Not every person on the DEI committee, but individuals from each school's DEI committee will be part of the DEI district-wide team. That DEI district-wide team will receive specialized training, and we will be working with an external facilitator to assist with DEI planning. We want to develop a DEI plan for Williamsville by Williamsville. We do not want a plan that is already made up and given to our district. It's very important that we are involved in the plan making for our school district. But we are going to have an external facilitator that is a specialist that will help us along guiding that plan development. Now, I do want to say also, this is not going to be a rushed process. It will be slow, meaningful, so that it is sustainable. That's what's really important, not just something that we check off because it's done, but it needs to become part of our district, part of Williamsville. Board Member Singh?
Dr. Brownell, I just want to clarify that the DEI committee is going to be different from the strategic planning committee, though there is an overlap in some of the activities that they would do.
Perfect. That word overlap is very important, right? Because there will be some individuals that are on the committees at their schools that will be part of the district-wide DEI team, but then there will also be stakeholders that will be part of that DEI team also that will not be on the individual school committees. So very good point.
In terms of building principals sending out invitations to join the committees, is that all going to be happening at the same time? I'm concerned that we're going to hear from one school to say, oh, we're being asked to join the committee over here. Another school has heard nothing.
Right. So what we have that's really unique about our district is that we have a solid group of principals that work together at each level, and they've been working together at each level. So we will have coordination along those levels.
And should parents expect to see that invitation before the February break, or would that be after the February break?
It will probably after the February break.
Okay.
Yes. Because again, we want to make sure that it's not rushed. It's very, methodic and thoughtful.
Okay.
Dr. Lippman.
Yeah, I had a question. Is it notes each school is forming their own committee made up of stakeholders as such? Well, two things. What oversight do we provide as a Board of Education? And second, could we be involved in specifics? Could we be involved as individual board members working with a specific school? Similarly to how we serve as liaison to the PTA. Has that been thought about?
You know what? That's a good question that had not been thought about. What had been thought about is how the board had representation on the district-wide strategic planning team, and that will continue because the work of the action plans at the school building are so school specific. It's really important that they have a school specific lens, right? So If the board would like regular updates, we can definitely do that. But being involved at that micro level for each school, I don't know that that would be productive. However, having representatives from the board on the district-wide DEI team is something that would be very advantageous.
Yeah, well, it comes to my mind because I've served on a number of committees and groups at Buffalo State, DEI, and I'm saying, okay, well, I have background and I have an interest, and if I could be helpful, I would be there. So.
Absolutely, many board members do. In discussion with many board members, we all different levels of training of DEI, expertise in DEI, have run DEI workbook groups, as board member Poulin has, and things of that nature. So it's really important that we look at the expertise on the board and then work with President Leatherborough to decide who will be on that DEI district-wide team representing the Board of Education.
Can I comment?
Please.
I think it's a really nice suggestion. My concern is we have liaisons at each school, but a number of board members do work during the day. And so I don't want to create a situation where one school has a liaison and the other one doesn't, just because someone has a day job. And I think with a few board members already serving on the district level team, I feel like that's really good oversight that we already do have. I don't think oversight's the right word.
Right.
We're not managing it, but engagement, right?
Engagement.
And involvement.
That word.
Thank you for that. Good word. Yeah.
Thank you.
And thank you for those comments.
So we experienced an email incident in our district back in December. So I do want to take a moment to talk about this because we did send notification to our families yesterday about the email incident. So in December, the district learned of an incident where our email servers were used to deliver potentially malicious links through reply emails. So all families were notified yesterday about the incident. Now, questions came up of, if this happened in December, why are we just hearing about it now? So the third bullet is very important. An external forensic team just completed the analysis of the event and concluded these things. Number one, it's unlikely any unauthorized person actually reviewed or downloaded the contents of the emails that were sent. So that's very important. Secondly, approximately 160 emails contain student-related information, but no PII, no personal identifiable information. We're taking steps to reduce the likelihood of an incident like this will occur again in consultation with our attorneys and the forensic team from the third-party company that we hired. So that last bullet is important because I don't want people to think that just now is when we started taking these steps. When the incident occurred, we notified the state education department, the district privacy officer connection like we were supposed to, and we took steps then to make sure we mitigate any type of incident like this happening again. Once the external forensic team completed their analysis, that's when we were able to notify our school community. Okay, now anyone that is individually impacted will receive a separate notification regarding that. Board of Education elections. So I want to thank our district clerk, Lynn Carey. She went through this already. I know the board has adopted the procedures, but we wanted to have this in the community update for reference. So the board candidate information and applications are available on the district's website. Those interested in being a board candidate should contact the district clerk, Lynn Carey, and her information is there. The budget vote and school board elections are May 17th, 2022. And I will say, I feel like every time I talk about and give the community update, it gets longer and longer. There's so much great information. We do a lot of it on the weekly update, but we know that parents like a one-stop shop. So we want to make sure we do a lot of recapping so they're able to download this in board docs also. Universal Pre-K. Information will be sent to eligible families on Friday, February 11th. 5-day, full-day UPK programming within the district. And with off-site providers, we saw a great presentation from Principal Bowen this evening about the UPK program at Country Parkway. For additional information on the district's UPK program, please call the Office of Student Services. The number is listed there, or visit the Universal Pre-K website, our williamsville.org /apply/universal pre-K. And that is the community update. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? I'm sorry, I should have asked that. So I do want to ask our communications director, Mr. Filipowski, to please pull up the calendar, the proposed calendar for the 22-23 school year. Thank you very much, Mr. Filipowski. So you can see from this calendar, we're going to do a little quiz. So this calendar has 182 student days. There are 3 superintendent conference days scheduled for August 31st, 30th, and September 1st. So for 22-23, how many snow days does Williamsville have? Absolutely 5 snow days. Thank you very much for that. So you will see from this calendar that this calendar, many of you will know that it mirrors the adopted BOCES calendar. So we have the days almost identical to BOCES, including the Wednesday before Thanksgiving and the 182 days with 3 superintendent conference days scheduled for the beginning of the school year for teacher professional learning.
Okay, and this is item 11C on our agenda. So anyone at home that wants to take a look at our draft calendar can pull it up that way. Is there any questions from the board on the calendar as it stands right now in draft form? Mr. Biscaglia.
And I know it's a draft, and I know this, my thoughts on this is it doesn't change this draft, coming up next year in my eyes, because, it's important to center it around BOCES days, their schedule, because they provide services to our students. But I suggest as a board in the future, if we discuss and possibly come up with a letter or something, writing to BOCES to ask spring break to be relatively the same each year, where it would be the week after the Easter holiday. I know there's been years that it has been before, but I think it just with traveling and many families that go away, it might be better for our community that way, just for future years to advocate for that from BOCES. I know they might not listen, but, at least I would feel, as a single board member, I would feel better advocating for that to possibly have that spring break be after that week in the future. And we can discuss that later. And if that's something we decided to vote on and do down the line, that would be great. But like I said, I know it doesn't quite change next year's because BOCES already, I believe, voted on their calendar. So
they vote on it.
Yeah, and I don't want to hurt the service. So yeah. Yep.
No. Board member Casimir.
No. I was just saying BOCES votes on it tomorrow, I believe.
Which won't change tonight.
Does anyone else from the board want to comment on that point?
So I just like to ask a question. So I know it was discussed. So what is the purpose? So I think everyone understands for the shift that might happen. There is some thought put into it. What is really the determining factor sometimes when that spring recess is scheduled?
Absolutely, and that's a great question, Vice President Van Cise. And just for full transparency, for the Erie 1 BOCES, myself and the Superintendent of Kenton, Mr. Sabatino Samato, are the JMT representatives developing the calendar, and BOCES does put thought into it. And the reason sometimes that Easter break may shift is because the idea of having students return from Easter break and go right into a New York State assessment is not something many districts want or look for. So in April of 2023, the New York State ELA assessments begin on Wednesday, April 19th. So if the week of Easter was given with students returning the 17th, 2 days later, they begin the New York State ELA assessments. And a lot of districts, you want to ease students into assessments. You don't want them returning to, any sort of anxiety or testing. So that's why a lot of times it will shift or it will move about.
Yeah, I knew that prior, and that's good for the public. That's very good to the public to know.
I believe that's why Vice President Van Cise asked, because she knew also.
Right, and then thinking of that, I just think sometimes it's better. And we actually kind of heard about the recess thing after, as kids come back from vacations with their mind clear, and sometimes that's a better thing for state exams, or any type of exam. Just thoughts, as we discuss this in the future, for advocating to do that.
Absolutely.
Okay, Dr. Singh?
I mean, when we develop the calendar here, I'm sure maybe in the future we can think about this, like through a DEI lens, where how the holidays fall and when they fall. I know it's not practical to have every holiday on every diverse occasion,
right?
But at least we can make sure that when that, let's say for example, in the Indian calendar of like Diwali, at least we can, when possible, make a request that we don't have exam on that day, so the kids will have a chance to celebrate the holiday at home instead of having to study for exam throughout the day, kind of thing.
I think that's a good point. I think that works to our advantage if you remain on that committee, because with all of the work that will be done in our district, you'll be able to hear from stakeholders and then take it back to that committee at the Erie Board BOCES level. And I agree with you about looking at it through a DEI lens, because what I might value as a day I feel deserves a recess might be different to my neighbor, and I need to respect that.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the calendar? So just for clarity, this is a draft calendar. We are not being asked to vote on this tonight.
Correct.
All right, thank you. So we are now on item 11D, which is our policies. I'm going to pull that up. Excuse me one moment. So in our board, oh, I picked on the wrong one. In board docs under 11D, you will see all the clean, edited, and current policies that we are approving tonight. There were 3 different policy committees that worked on the 1,000 level, 2,000 level, and 3,000 level policies. So that's why you see so many up for approval. And I just want to thank the members of the board that served on any one of those policy committees, because it was an additional assignment that each of you took on. So thank you for that. So at this time, first we're going to take them from the table and then we'll vote on them. Is there a motion to take from the table the following policies for the second reading and adoption? 1338, duties of the school physician nurse practitioner. 1339, internal audit function. 2310, membership in associations. 3130, shared decision-making school-based planning. 3140, flag display. 3250, parent-teacher association. 3310, public access to records. 6160, professional growth and student development. 8242, character education. And the removal of the following policies: 3240, student participation. And 3430, uniform, violent, and disruptive incident systems. Is there a motion, please, to take them from the table at this time? Thank you, Mrs. Beeger, and second, Board Member Poulin. All in favor of removing them from the table? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And now at this time, is there a motion for the second reading and adoption of the above policies? Thank you, Dr. McCleary and Vice President Van Cise. Is there any discussion on these policies? This is our second reading. We did review them at last month's meeting as well. Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. And I just want to again recognize that a number of these policies had not been updated since 2000, what was it, like 2009, right? So there was a tremendous amount of work, and it took multiple meetings for all of this to get done. And when we come back to our March board meeting, we'll set up our next set of meetings for policies.
It's correct.
All right, we are going on to the budget and finance portion of our meeting. 12A. And so, Superintendent Brown-Hall, I turn it over to you for our budget development.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask our Chief Financial Officer, our Assistant Superintendent of Finance, Mr. Tom Matursky, to come up and give that presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Brown-Hall. Good evening, everyone. This is going to be the second presentation that we have had on the budget. First one being in January. If we can put that up,
There we
okay.
go.
So, getting right into it. I'm starting back with another review of the program increases. There has not been much change in this from the information that everyone received in January. I think just again, go over the highlight here. First of all, the items are all maintenance items to keep what we have in our current budget moving forward. And they're coded as either contract, inflation, or program. So you can see from the information that the majority of these are human resource related. 4.6 million is our human resource increases in salaries. And then the other three items underneath it are about $2 million on the benefit side. We have a couple other items that have been added toward the bottom. Our BOCES services, which is again student-centered, 375,000. And then our transportation, we have a contract with our contractor, and this not only includes the required SED increase per our contract, but at the same time, fuel increases. As we know, fuel costs are going up, and the district provides the fuel to our transportation operation. And then lastly, we have some supply increases strictly for the instructional side. A couple examples here are athletics, music, arts, and math. So with that, it results in an increase of $7,602,119 and provides a working budget on the expenditure side of $212,623,086, which is 3.71%. Just to kind of go over to the right side of the budget, we always use a 2-year look, and this is really to see how our expenses may line up for the next year. You'll see that a lot of the expenses are very close. The only difference is in health insurance, and we are expecting that to increase not just next year, but the following years due to the impact COVID has on our health insurance and health industry. So again, that's just an informational item on what may be in store in the following year. So next, we had some very good news received from our state governor, and we received information. And the key item I want to share here tonight is this is a little bit different than other governor budget presentations. This is a very good presentation as far as what it does for school districts. And as a result, the information we're receiving from all different sources is there's not going to be a lot of changes as we have seen in the past where the legislature adds a lot of money to the budgets. So what I wanted to do is to explain and show, so that's full transparency here, how these budget numbers are arrived on the state aid side. If you were to look at the governor's proposal and what it came in for our district, there would be a aid amount of about $54.8 million. And if you looked at that same report at the bottom side, it compares it to this year. That's the actual amount that we're receiving. That's about 48.7. So it's a $6.1 million increase. However, we have to understand how that was calculated by the state. And one of the first items that has to be reduced from that is our UPK number. And the reason for that is that's not a general fund budget or expense. That is budgeted and accounted for in the special aid fund. So we can't include that in our general fund budget, so that is removed. We then move down to the first three items I list there as aid reductions. And the reason for that is when we prepare our September information to the state, we give them our 2021-22 budget. And they use that full budget as a way to calculate the following year's aid. We know we're not going to expend the full budget, and we know historically why and what areas we don't expend. So these are the adjustments that go with that. So essentially, foundation aid, transportation aid, excess cost aid, they're all reduced to properly budget those dollar amounts. BOCES is a different item this year because the board knows about 2 years ago, you all approved a capital project for BOCES, Every Erie County school district that participates in Erie 1 was required to do so. We've made 2 payments already to them, and the payments have been about $1 million each. And as a result, we get BOCES aid on it. The problem is that's going to be short-lived. We have 1 more payment to go this year, and that's it. And then this large amount of aid falls off. You don't want to budget it and then have a shortfall in a couple years, because then you have a deficit situation. And then we had a same situation where they look at our total budget and we know we'll be a little bit under on the expense. The last item I just want to note here is building aid. Our music projects are completed from our perspective. They're being used, but the final reports have not been submitted because the contracts are still being closed out. The fact is that the state doesn't aid you till they approve your final cost reports, and it's likely that that timing will not meet the aid reports for next year. So as a result, we can't count on those dollars at this point. The result is $5.2 million of reductions, which results in a state aid budgeted amount of $49,628,712,000. That's an increase of almost $2 million, $1,932,551. So now going to the tax cap calculation. And here, again, pretty straightforward, same calculation you've seen in the past. We start with our current year tax levy, $133,790,000. The growth factors provided by the New York State Department of Finance, that is used to multiply down. We then add our current year budgeted pilot amount, and then that's multiplied by 2%, which is the maximum. Again, 6.58% is the CPI rate for the Northeast consumer sector. And so you can see the difference here between what we're allowed to actually increase and what the actual inflation rate was for our area. You then add the increase in pilots, or that's subtracted back out here, and then that provides us a tax levy limit of $137,239,320. When you go down a bit, you're seeing that we had a little bit of a carryover, and that percent levy increase at the cap would be 2.58%. The recommendation is to provide a proposed levy under the cap at $137,200,000. That's a $3,410,000 increase, 2.55% increase of the levy, and it would be at $46,892 under the cap. So looking at what our revenue budget is for projected at this time for the next year, I want to go back to the state aid amount, that $1.9 million, and say this is really something that we need to understand, that it's great news. If you look at the prior year, the current year, our 21-22 budget, that $47.6 million included $3 million of federal aid. The increase that we now have with the foundation aid and the state, we are not relying on federal aid in the next year's budget. So we have eliminated that potential deficit in the future. So that is a good thing. We then go down and we see a couple other major changes. Our pilots, you saw that was adjusted in the tax cap calculation. So you're seeing an increase here of $517,542. And you're also seeing $1 million increase in sales tax. So all that said and done, you go to the bottom, you're seeing that our actual revenue budget is $211,981,60. And then just to kind of go back and show you this in a little better summary, you're seeing that we have $212,623.86 of expense estimate. We have a deficit so far of $742,026, which at this point in time is very, very good. So with that all said, you're looking at a tax levy increase of 2.55% and a budget increase of 3.71 in a year, again, where the consumer price index is 6.58%. So a couple things here of note, which makes this even, I think, better. We have not included any retirement adjustments in this at this point. So those are forthcoming, and we will be including that when we do the preliminary budget presentation in March. So again, just highlighting some of the positive as well the negatives. On the positive side, this is a maintenance expenditure budget with no program cuts. The state increases, we removed that federal aid that we had in the current year, so that's great. So we have somewhat no budget shortfalls. We also have some growth in our revenue areas, which is great. The payment in lieu of taxes and the sales tax, which is good. And all signs are indicating that we might possibly be exiting COVID, which should be good news for the economy. On the negatives, again, we have to be concerned about inflation. Will that continue to go up, and how that will affect not so much this current budget, but future budgets? Uncertainty on the long-term revenue stream to New York State, and essentially our budget's no longer relying on federal aid, but their budget is. So what happens when that federal revenue goes away from New York State? Will it impact our state aid? Will they be able to continue to support the higher foundation aid amounts? That is a question for a couple years down the road. And then lastly, again, how the economy will be reacting. If the economy continues to improve, that also affects other parts of our revenue budget that will be able to be increased. So again, at this meeting, what we're just doing is we're presenting the information, we'll receive feedback. We have a budget forum a little bit later. We have the budget feedback email that is now active. We'll be updating our program continuation and our revenue budget between now and the next meeting in March. We'll definitely balance the budget, no doubt about that. And then again, we'll be presenting that information at the March meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Matursky. And we do have our budget work session with the public forum a little bit later, but I want to use this time to answer any board member questions or comments. Any questions or comments from the board related to the budget presentation thus far? Dr. Lippman. I'll start on the left and I'll go this way.
Yeah, well, I'll start here. As usual, Mr. Matursky does an excellent job with all of the data, laying it out, making it easy to follow and explain. I have a few micro questions, and we'll save the giant questions for another day. But you talked about a larger increase in pilot payments and proposed sales tax increases, and I know pilots tend to go through the board and we see them. So I don't know if I missed something, or I was just trying to get clarity on where that was coming from, that large increase.
Sure. The payment in lieu of taxes is the actual amount of actual, there's not tax certiorari, they're actually payment in lieu of tax agreements that we receive from the town of Amherst, essentially. That is for boundaries within our district, locations within our district. And we have actually had a growth in that this year. Some of that is new, some of that is agreements that have been changed. And so that is actually reflective of this year's revenue. So that's why that goes up. And what's done in the tax cap calculation is it's required that you really do that changing on an annual basis so that it's reflective if you're audited. And they do audit the tax cap formula, the Office of the State Comptroller, every year. They take a look at it and they want to make sure that your numbers are truly reflective of what's going on. And that's really why the payment in lieu of taxes is going up.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions, Dr. Lippman?
No, it's what I always say. It's a challenging job of Mr. Matursky and the board to try to balance the revenue and the expenses. And as I asked about information about efficiencies, I know that the district has worked very hard to save money over time to find efficiencies, and that's always positive. But as you always say, taxes always go up, but how high do they need to go up would be my and so it's a continuing project, so we'll wait and see how it all goes.
Thank you, Dr.
Those are my thoughts.
Anyone else on my left with questions about the budget? Anyone on my right? Mr. Biscaglia.
Thanks for the presentation. This might not be a question you could answer, but just to ask, you mentioned with the negatives, uncertainty on New York's long-term revenue stream, we don't rely on the federal aid. Obviously, the state does. I understood that, but you said you mentioned in a couple years is what the state would have to worry about where it could affect school districts. So you're not saying next year, it might be like 3 or 4 years, or what's your estimate of where it might possibly? I'm not saying it would, but.
Right. Well, all that I would say is I'm tying it more to the ESSER 2, the GEAR 2, and the ARP funding, and that expires in September 23.
Okay.
So again, I'm assuming the state's on the same timeline as what school districts are. So I'm thinking that 23, 24, 24, 25 years when you'll probably see it, most likely 24, 25.
I answered it. Thank you.
Dr. Singh?
I mean, this is just a hypothetical question. At the presentation by Dr. Rick Timms earlier, he mentioned that this being an election year, they're getting more money. And this might continue for next year. But going down the road, 3-4 years down the road, we may not get so much money in foundation aid.
Right.
And if that does happen, would there be, this is hypothetical, of course, would there be we do have to cut programs at that point, or?
I would say that every budget year is unique. There always are items within our budget that we have prioritized. And although we don't want to make reductions, I think last year was a great example. We had dire consequences that I had presented really going back to December in the long range plan. And then with January, where at that point I shared, I think there were 4.5 pages of items that were non-mandatory. Those were the non-mandatory items. And I didn't even try to do it. I did add it up, but I didn't share it with the board. But none of those items would have been easy reduction. So the thing that you would probably do, as has happened many years in the past, is you cut items such as supplies. You cut items, those items as far away from the classroom as you can. The only problem with that is, as you all know from the December long-range plan presentation, about 70% of our budget salary and benefits. So those other items don't account for much. I think I shared at the meeting before that our athletic budget is only about $1.8 million. For a district our size, a $205 million budget, that's nothing. So even if you were to eliminate that whole program, you may not have any true impact on a major deficit. So the answer is it's complicated, not because of making the cuts, it's because they're hard cuts to make.
Thank you for that. And I was a part of the budget training event with Erie Wimbosees with Rick Timms as well. And what struck me is throughout his presentation, first of all, I thought that that would be a great job for you in the future of doing something along that line. We don't want you to leave, but you would be excellent at that. But that my other thought was that every tip he gave, because he speaks in very clear language, you don't have to have a business background to understand how he's explaining things, much in the same way that you do, which I fully appreciate. But every suggestion he made, I was able to reflect and say, we're doing that, we're doing that. So we talked about the importance of having that long-range planning. And he gave exactly what Dr. Singh just mentioned, that yes, this year looks great with how much aid we're getting, but if we don't fix the foundation formula, and like, for example, it's being funded off the 2020 or 2000 census, right? So it's over 20 years old, the data that's being used to make those decisions, not to mention the details in how those different things are aided is way off. So, when we lobby tomorrow afternoon, we have a series of questions that we can ask Assemblywoman McMahon and Senator Rath, and we'll be doing that next week as well, because we're in really good shape for this year, but we want to make sure that we're really being proactive about the future. Another piece that was shared in the training yesterday, last week, Thursday, was so timely with relations to our budget season and our lobbying efforts tomorrow, is grant funding. And so when we look at the American Rescue Plan, for example, as one form of funding, the recommendation that was made was don't allocate that money for something that you can't fund later on down the road. And so it was recommended that you use it for materials and programs and supports. A big bang for your buck is staff professional development. If you are going to use it to staff positions, they need to be positions that you're considering for the short term. And I was so appreciative of that, thinking about the forethought, the mindful decision making that took place with Dr. Balin's office in terms of how that money would be used with our learning labs, because that's helping with learning recovery as a result of the pandemic. If we're able to sustain it in the future, wonderful. But if we're not, it's not going to be a detriment if we can't. So I was just really happy to be able to attend that presentation and feel so confident. I always feel confident with you, Mr. Matursky, but just to have everything aligned, everything that he was saying, I was thinking we're doing that. And that's a very comfortable position to be in as a board member. So thank you for that.
Okay.
I think we're good.
Awesome.
We will revisit budget and finance in just a few minutes. So now that Mr. Matursky has done his presentation, just want to make sure I didn't skip. We are still on the rest of the items in 12. So I'm asking for a motion to resolve and approve the property tax settlements in 12B, 12C, and 12D as presented. Thank you, Mr. Biscaglia and Vice President Van Cise. Any discussion on the property tax settlements? All in favor? All right, all hands up equals motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item 13 is our liaisons. Does anyone from the board wish to report on a meeting or event that they attended related to their liaison assignment? Ms. Kazmarek-Bogner.
Thank you, President Leatherborough. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I attended a SEPSA event recently, which was an informative special education presentation. And I would like to thank Kathy Ratzel, Cheryl Lazaro, goodness, I'm tongue-tied, John D'Angelo from the Office of Exceptional Education for presenting, and for Mr. Scanzuzzo's attendance and helping to answer the participant questions. I really appreciated having the presence of our wonderful Office of Exceptional Education there, and it was a great informative presentation, so thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kazmarek-Bogner. I popped on the end of that meeting and I was like blown away with how many district staff were on there because it was a Zoom call. I was practically in my pajamas and I'm like, wow, look at all these people. And here they are, giving of their time in the evening like that. So it was really very well done. And there was some great questions by the parents too. So I think they really appreciated. Sometimes you see a name, but now you'll be able to connect a name with a face and give the parents that time, that screen time, was just really well done. And kudos to SEPSA for putting that together. Anybody else on a liaison assignment that they want to share? Okay, thank you. Item 14, as mentioned in the president's report, tomorrow is lobby day, and our community can be proud that there are 3 board members lobbying tomorrow with our local legislators and our superintendent, who will also be lobbying next week with on similar issues, because we're all a united front lobbying for the same issues. All right, no items under 15 or 16. Item 17, there is information in board docs regarding the district air conditioning capital project. I want to be clear that this is not a done deal. This is something that would need to go through the community for a vote. But is there any questions from the board? Or I should say, what questions do you have at this time regarding the air conditioning project? I did submit a question just noticing the priority of elementary, middle school, high school. And I was just trying to understand, aside from the children being younger, was there any was there any rationale given to like the age of the building or the something not student related that helps to make the decision to pursue the elementary implementation first?
I would say that one of the guiding reasons why we also chose elementary was our use of the building for summer school, and actually it's non-use. In the last few years, when we've had warmer summer weather, we've actually made decisions to try and not use elementaries and instead to use a middle school, and that's not really the best for students of that age. They really need to be in their building. It's fit for them. The furniture is better. We do move furniture, but it's not the comfortable feeling that they normally would have. So when we thought about that, we thought the elementary, we should concentrate on those buildings first, and that's why they are the number one priority.
And so I appreciate that rationale. That actually makes a lot of sense. Was I understanding it correctly then that you would do all elementary schools at the same time?
Mm-hmm. That would be what is presented there. The recommendation at this point is that initially we were thinking we're going to do the entire district. As you all know, we've been working on this really since September. And when we got the first cost estimates in, they really, of course, were much higher than anyone could have projected. And so when we broke it down, it made sense to go with the elementary schools as a phase one. And then you have two other phases, or at least plan now, you could have one more phase, but that $60 million number would just be for all the elementaries. And then again, the rationale that is provided in there is, due to really four major things, being that first of all, if you do that, you're going to move forward. You're going to be putting it in those schools at a point in time where they need it. And then, you're not buying the rest of this, which is really kind of COVID inflated pricing. It gives us time to do a little more research on some of the other systems. Some of them may benefit some of the other buildings more than the elementary. Those elementary buildings, the system we selected is really perfect for it. And then, lastly, I think we also can create some additional reserve funding, which is very important, and that reduces the project expense in the future.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, thank you very much for that. Dr. Littman.
I had the same thoughts that President Leatherborough had, but you're talking about doing all of the 6 elementary schools at the same time. And just my view on, looking at all of the supply chain issues and getting, the employees necessary to do all of that, that would seem feasible to do. I mean, I'm thinking from our school visits, a number of the elementary schools are laid out and designed in the same way. Mm-hmm. So, some of those timeliness and cost factors, would kind of carry over. If you have one building with others similar, that makes it a much more fluid. But my concern again would be, in the time and with the materials and all those things, they could all be done at one time. Mm-hmm. Leave it up to the professionals.
Vice President Van Cise?
Just a clarifying question. So for the capital project, would the community be voting on just the elementary project, or we're breaking it up into phases? So it's still a vote for the air conditioning project, but we are going to look at doing it in a phased out process.
The way I would recommend it initially, and that's up to the board's decision, would be only to vote on $60 million for phase one. That's all.
That's all. Okay. Thank you for that.
So one last question.
Dr. Singh.
So how much time do you think it'll take for the phase one to get complete?
Great question. So the timeline would probably be like this. If you had approval this coming May 22, it's going to take about 7 months to do the physical design because they haven't done that yet. So that takes us to January 23. And at that point, they submit it to the New York State Education Department. And so we'll say that takes them 6 months for approval. That's what it took our most recent security project. So that really takes us out to about July, August for approval. We would then do a bid in September 23, and then we would do bid awards in November 23. Construction would begin in April 24, and it's the way this is going to work. It's going to be a lot different than what prior projects have occurred. Prior projects we've done only in summer for the most part. This is going to be a full year-round project. So you are actually going to need portable classrooms, and they're going to stage this by wing. So they're going to take one wing out at a school. They're going to do 2 schools at the same time. So maybe 3, depending on what they can do. It's a 2-year project, essentially, with the need to do 2 years of actual commissioning. And what I mean by that is you need another cooling year. So if you end in September, you have to have that next summer to make sure that the systems are commissioned and operating correctly. That doesn't affect the usage, but it affects the project end date, which will affect the aid. Okay. The aid will be a little bit longer than a normal project. So having said all of that, your answer to your question is, if you're starting in 24, you'll probably be done somewhere around 26 for this first phase.
So by your schedule, then we'll be starting the second vote even before the first one is completed.
We would probably go out, and that's why I think I put in there 25 or so, because you want to get the paperwork done first and get that. So you're actually going right behind it. And that will also benefit the cost piece, because if you've got contractors who are still in the district, they're going to be more inclined to give you good bid pricing to stay in the district. And that's how past projects have worked here. If we had multiple projects, you get a contractor who's working here, they know it, they like working here, they get paid on time, so they want to rebid here, and they give us good pricing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate the questions and the explanation, because it really is, we're looking at a very long range process.
Yes.
But we're looking to start with our elementary schools, and the lotus grows in the mud, right? So it might get a little messy, but it's going to come out to a beautiful result. So thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Our next item is item 18, which is our universal pre-kindergarten presentation. Dr. Brown-Hall, I turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. And to piggyback on that phenomenal presentation that was given earlier by Principal Bowen, we're going to ask Dr. Bailen and Assistant Superintendent Scanzuzo to come up and present about UPK.
Thank you, Dr. Brown-Hall, Board of Education. I know that there's been much conversation about UPK, so I hope that this presentation gives you a little more information detailing what goes into the Universal Pre-K program. But before we get started, I just want to say that for most families, this is the first experience with the Williamsville Central School District, and we strive to make it a pleasant and harmonious relationship. And I think, as we've seen from evidence of the few families that talked about Country Parkway's experience, that's exactly how we'd like to have our UPK experiences at all 7 locations where we are hosting UPK programming throughout the district, within our buildings and with our CBOs, our community-based organizations. We want to recognize the amount of work that goes into planning, preparing, notifying families, the organization and systematic procedures put in place by Cheryl Lazaro and carried out by Mary Bengart, our secretary. Very much appreciated, because there is a tremendous amount of work and detail that goes into gathering information for families to ensure that they're part of a process. Can we start the presentation? Oops. There we go. So the New York State Department of Education states that the purpose of the pre-kindergarten standards is to ensure that all children have rich and varied learning experiences that prepare them for success in school and establish a sound foundation for college and career readiness. So some information, some facts regarding UPK. Who's eligible? Children who will be 4 years old by December 1st for the upcoming school year. They have to be Williamsville Central School District registered students. And students must meet the New York State immunization and health mandated requirements that all students are obliged to. Where are our classes? For the 2021 school year, there are 5 community-based organizations, our CBOs that we refer to, with 12 classes, and they're at Launchpad, Pixie Village, Child Time, EduKids at Cross Point, and EduKids in Williamsville, in addition to our 2 classes each at Country Parkway and Forest Elementary schools. Students are expected to attend 5 days a week. It's a 180-day school year. Parents are responsible for transportation of their children to and from the UPK program. So how many children can participate? So this past year, we had, based on our census, approximately 600 students that were eligible for UPK programming. Next year, based on our census information, we have about 538 approximately students who are eligible. We have 222 students this year in our full day UPK programming. 142 of those students are at the community-based organizations, and 80 are in our 4 district classes. We have 62 kids that are attending half-day UPK programming at our CBOs, for a total of 284 students who are benefiting from the UPK programming and preparing them for kindergarten. Families apply. Children are placed through a lottery process based on the fact that we have more families eligible for the spots that we have available. Williamsville provides UPK by contracting with, I said, the 5 CBOs in those locations. And we have a UPK consultant who provides additional oversight of the CPOs. And that person's is funded through the grant. We have a maximized our class sizes of 20 students in a class. And with that, we have 1 UPK teacher. We have 2 paraprofessionals, 2 aides that help. And for classes with 18 students, we have 1 teacher and 1 aide. And those are the basic requirements established for the guidance of the UPK program. We also have links to our Williamsville Central School District website, which illustrates a lot of the information regarding our UPK programming and what is needed as far as detailed information that Mrs. Lazar will be providing you shortly, along with the New York State Education Department guidance on UPK and what that entails regarding curriculum and areas that need to be covered for instructional purposes, so on and so forth. And at this time, I'd like to bring up Cheryl Lazaro, and she'll talk about the student selection notification process. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Scanzuzzo. Dr. Brown Hall and board, thank you for having me. To share some of the information to expand on what Mr. Scanzuzzo was talking about, it is a lengthy process. We have actually started the process to get ready for next year. As you know, things take some time. We go from January until actually September through the process of inviting our families if they're interested, making sure they get all the information and get to the point that we actually have them placed. So I just wanted to explain a little bit what that looks like for you. And if you have questions, obviously I'd be happy to answer that. So as I said, January, we develop the interest letters that we want to send to the families. The information changes every year a little bit depending on the community-based organizations we have. And this year it was wonderful. We had 4 classes inside our in-house in our own district, which was really exciting. February now, actually, as you saw on a slide that Dr. Brown Hall had up earlier, that this Friday, actually, those letters now will be going out to our families. They've been, the envelopes have been stuffed and they're ready to go out into the mail. We then have to give the families time to look at that information, really determine, they might have a child that's eligible, but really determine, do they really want to access the UPK? And there can be very varied reasons why they may or may not. So we give them time to send back those interest forms. We give them all kinds of information. We receive a lot of phone calls asking for information to make sure they have clarity. And we get those pieces back generally in March. And we have them, the parents that are interested, we then have them make sure all the documentation for actually registering their child as a Williamsville student immunization information, all those things that are required. We make sure that we help them through that process. Come April, once we have all of our families, we have all the information in, we do run a random lottery. This is something that's required because of the grant funding that we have, that if, as Mr. Scanzuzzo said, we have more families than we do spots. And so we do run a random lottery. I do that. I only see numbers. I see no names. I purposely make sure I don't see names and don't know who anybody is, so that I can do that completely blind. Once we get the numbers in, we compare that to when the families submitted their interest forms, and we assign every child a lottery number, and all of that is ranked. It's very complicated and kind of a long process, to be honest with you, because when the parents say, yes, I'm interested in having my child in the UPK process for the lottery process, we also ask them, because we have 5 CBOs and we have 4 classes in-house, what their preference may be for a placement. We do share, though, that we can't guarantee that. We can't even guarantee that they obviously will get a placement, but we can't also guarantee that we will be able to give them their preference. We ask for their first, second, and third choice, so that if they don't get their first choice, we go from there. So we really try to accommodate our families as best we can through the process. And a lot of them, a lot of families, they already have maybe some other children already at one of the CBO sites, and they really want that site. But again, we can't promise that we can do that based on their lottery ranking and where they fell. And that process goes from the middle of April until through May and into June that we work, and it takes that many weeks to really take all the information and literally place all the students in all the slots at all the CBOs in our 4 in-house classes. So we continue all that, and we notify the families. The letters go out of the families that their child did get in through the lottery process, but at the same time, we also send notification to the families that their child did not get in, but they go on a wait list. And, and believe it or not, we go through quite a few, always over 100 families where children come off the wait list and they do get placed as the school year progresses for all kinds of reasons, that families may move. They have their children, taken out of the program. So that does happen. So we confirm all the schedules. We set up, working with UB, we set up screenings. We put together all the information. We get the class list together, all of that. We get everything ready for all the screenings and assessments, make sure we have all the materials ordered for the school year for everything. And that's all done by the end of August. And then come September, I always hold a parent orientation at every site this past year, whether it was virtual or in person or however that was worked. But I always give a parent orientation to make sure the parents have a good understanding of how things will look, the transparency of all the information for the screenings that happen. And there's many of those that we'll go over, but also give the parents an opportunity face-to-face, so to speak, to be able to ask questions and be reassured about how things work and what it's going to look like, what their child's day is going to look like, what the curriculum is all about, all of that. So that happens in September, and we go through all of that. We talk about parent conferences, the progress reporting for report cards, and try to give the parents as much information as we can. And of course, we make our office available at any time that they have questions or concerns. So that's most of the information that I have that I wanted to share for the board. So obviously, once we're done, if you have questions, please let me know. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Good evening, everyone. We also wanted to share with you UPK from an instructional program perspective. And as Cheryl mentioned, our program has been running actually for quite some time at our community-based organizations. We're most fortunate this year to include now, as you know, Country Parkway and Forest Elementary. With that, we had to do quite a bit of planning around what the program would look like here in the district. So based upon New York State Education Department considerations for planning and implementing UPK programs, as well as state guidance and regulations, we had to first ensure that our program was in alignment with our K-12 program and our learning standards. So that strong instructional content aligned to our standards and K-12 was a focus as we set out to plan our program. Part of what the state also requires is that students experience learning in a center model. And what this really calls for is a blend of teacher-initiated as well as student-initiated activities, which I think you got to see some of that as we saw the video this evening. From a reading and literacy perspective, we must provide early literacy and emergent reading instruction. With that, we did review several programs and a way to really bring that piece to our early learners. What we were seeking is authentic experiences with reading, thinking, talking, writing, and reflecting. And what we came across is actually a wonderful program that aligns in a very nice way with our philosophy and our instructional program. And we are using Fountas and Pinnell's classroom for pre-K this year with our teachers and our students, and have gotten quite a bit of very positive feedback from both our professionals as well as our parents. From a math perspective, really we're looking at routines and what students encounter in their everyday lives and their environments. Practice counting items, describing attributes, identifying shapes, making and recognizing patterns, and sorting and comparing groups of objects are just some of the items that they focus on from a math perspective. From science, again, the idea here is that students are not only reading about and talking about, but also living science. What does this look like? Obviously, dealing with the weather, their senses, plants and animals, doing some experiments as well around liquids and solids, and sounds within their environment are some of the areas of focus. As you can imagine, a tremendous amount of focus is also placed not just from an academic perspective, but also on social emotional development. Items such as asking for help, working with peers, following directions, working in groups, completing tasks, and taking turns are emphasized during the program. Daily living, language, fine motor, and gross motor skills round out a very comprehensive program. In this regard, students are doing a variety of things, including self-care, as well as holding pens and crayons, using scissors, and they've done an excellent job. I've seen this with my own eyes. It's quite impressive what the students are doing. Drawing, running, jumping, hopping, and throwing and kicking a ball. No, they're not running with scissors. That's a good clarification. No, they're not. So we wanted to share with you too, and thank you to Mr. Bowen. This is an example of the UPK daily schedule at Country Parkway. So you can see many of the items we just talked about are embedded within the schedule. What was really a great planning component before the school year even started is convening the 4 teachers, and they've been wonderful, very involved in building the program, but really having a consistent schedule with all of the elements described across the 4 classrooms. And also Cheryl has done a tremendous job, because everything we've talked about here is not exclusive just to our Williamsville classrooms. This is also the program that's being delivered at the CBOs. So that took, again, a tremendous amount of cohesion and collective, thought and processing, but Cheryl did a wonderful job making sure what we were planning on delivering here is also something that we were delivering to our children who are in our community-based organization classrooms. She also added in for us, which I do think is a nice graphic, is how all of this comes together, again, with a nice emphasis on curriculum, instruction, and assessment. Again, much like what you hear about in our K through 12 program, there is assessment that happens, monitoring, designing appropriate instruction and lesson planning, communication with parents and within the team itself, any needs for referrals based on any particular observations that are made during the program. If a student does have an area of focus that needs to be emphasized a bit more, that is also something that comes out in this process. Again, a very targeted instructional approach and very much a collaborative problem-solving effort, both with the professionals involved in the program as well as parents. We did want all of you and our public to see that screening and assessment is also a mainstay of the program. Part of the commissioner's regulations for the program include that many of this actually is reflected there, but also in our commissioner's regulations, part 117, as students enter a school district for the first time, things like speech and language and hearing and vision screens must also be provided to students. Assessment must also be used from an academic standpoint and a social standpoint to establish children's developmental baselines and evaluate progress as required on an ongoing basis. So we have just outlined some of that for you. We also did want you to know, Cheryl mentioned the progress report. Again, this is something that was worked on internally and collaboratively with teachers involved, our instructional specialists, and our district administrators to ensure that the progress report that was developed not only aligned with and reflected all of the elements I just spoke of, but also gave valuable information to parents, some of whom you heard in the video describe that they are able to then work with their children at home, emphasizing some of the areas, and they are very clear, knowing in the progress report the areas that the students have already met with success. So we believe it to be a very useful tool in that regard as well, which is very important. We did want to thank in conclusion, along with Cheryl Lazaro, Danielle Bickert and Tracy Kosis are the two teachers at Country Parkway, Karen Losi and Maria Shantler at Forest. Andrew Bowen is here with us tonight. We also wanted to thank Mr. Wang over at Forest, along with Gail Militello, Chris McGinley, and Tom Bird, who were very much part of this planning team. So thank you for the opportunity to hear from us tonight and share this wonderful success story of UPK, and we look forward again to much more to come in the future. The students are doing a tremendous job. We're very proud of them. Thank you, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. I'm going to start on my right and then go down the table. All right. Dr. Singh, any questions? Great. Dr. McCleary.
Yes, I just have a few very small questions about the CBO places or placement. Are they, those buildings, we'll call them, are they also roughly within the district boundaries, or are they lots of different places?
They are in the district boundaries.
Cool.
Yes.
And at those facilities, is it only Williamsville students?
Correct, in our UPK program.
Okay.
Yes.
So that is our program, even though it's physically housed some in other buildings.
Correct. It's an extension of the Williamsville Schools program. Yes.
So they would have the the examples you gave from Country Parkway. If I went to whatever it was, little child, whatever, I would see those same kinds of things.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mr. Biscayne?
Sounds like a wonderful program, but I did have a question of what the thought base or discussion was to end at a 1:30/1:45 time when many, I know they're private schools, but around Williamsville, for example, St. Greg's or St. Peter and Paul, end at 2:33.
So that's Country Parkway start time, and they basically, because the parents are providing transportation, we wanted to have them start earlier to prevent any backlog or bottleneck of buses coming in and families coming in and dropping those kids off.
No, the end time, not the beginning time. So it says I'm just going through a daily schedule that ends at one, afternoon circle and goodbye song is 1:30, dismissal is 1:45. Is that when
That's Country Parkway.
dismissal? Is it?
Andrew, that's your end time for the program?
That's our end time. And
Yes.
There's a certain number of time.
Sorry, I'm making you get up.
Yeah. I can interject in there too. It's a 5-hour program, and with lunch, it's 5.5-hour program. So if they're starting earlier, obviously they're ending earlier. And even for our CBOs, the times vary a little bit because we have even students at Country Parkway and Forest. They might actually have other children attending other schools like Heim Elementary or, KC Middle or whatever. So there is the opportunity to make sure there isn't a bottleneck and that parents can drop their kids off and things move smoothly, so to speak. But go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a 5.5-hour day that the students receive. In addition, we did some planning in terms of if our arrival is at 8:15 for our students, we altered the time that our students, our Country Parkway students, can come into the building and be supervised, although classes don't start right away. So parents don't have an issue or difficulty dropping their UPK student and then their school-age child and make two different drops. So we've tried to be as accommodating as possible.
If it's possible, not in a dire need, could we get the email of each CBO and the start and end times, if you don't mind?
Sure, I can provide you the start and end times.
Yeah,
It varies across the sites, but
that's why I want to take your time. I would understand it. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
You
We
don't mind.
have that. And it may vary for next year. Each year it varies a little bit, but usually the start time is within a 45-minute to maybe 75-minute time frame that there might be a shift, because obviously they have other commitments and requirements that they have to follow as well. But I can definitely send that so that the board has that access.
If you don't mind, thank you.
To
very much.
piggyback on that, could that be attached to this item in board docs?
Sure.
When you get that information, Dr. Brown Hall, that
Okay.
way if a parent is looking at it and they're viewing the whole presentation, they'll see that there too.
Absolutely.
All in one
Okay.
place. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Vice President Van Slyce, any questions?
Yeah, just a quick question. So we've already touched on it a couple times. So truly, the UPK is inclusive. We really have different placements, but it's the same universal program that is now what Cheryl, you said you were heading up to make sure that they're all delivering the same instructional, presentation to all of our children.
Right. The
That's
basis
correct.
is New York State education curriculum, the pre-K curriculum. First and foremost, they're delivering the required curriculum.
Which is excellent that even our CBOs are doing this, because as we know, we don't want just our Williamsville schools having the UPK delivering one set of instructional materials and then the CBO. So I love that. That's very exciting. Mr. Bowen and I were talking how important it is. So this presentation, thank you so much for it. I think it's wonderful. I'm thrilled that we have a UPK program that is this comprehensive now for our students, because providing these experiences and truly having our children come in as kindergartners with management, addressing functioning and management needs already, they are truly ready to learn, and we'll be able to help them even more. So I think it's outstanding. I thank you so much for this presentation.
We're very deliberate in ensuring that our CBOs and our in-district classes are going to be mirroring each other to the point where our CBO instructors are getting the same professional development with the new instructional model and curriculum that we instituted this year as our teachers did. So very deliberate, making sure that, wherever the location is, the instruction, the programming is going to be the same.
Great. Thank you.
On my left, Ms. Kazmierczak-Bobner.
I don't have a question, but I did want to make a comment. When we did our school visits recently, we went to Country Parkway and were able to see one of the UPK classrooms. I was just impressed at how engaged those students were in the classroom. I think they were doing letters and sounds, E for elephant, if I'm correct. And they were just so engaged in the lessons, and even in their separate centers. With that many kids in a classroom, being able to really focus on the task at hand, I was just so impressed. So thank you all for what you're doing. I appreciate it.
It's a credit to families. I mean, that are
Yes, it
raising
is.
these kids, because I think we had less separation anxiety and issues with our pre-K kids than we did with our own kindergarten.
That's true.
That's a fact.
It's the magic of UPK, and the UPK teachers have just done a phenomenal job. They're very intentional in planning their day, so to hit all of those skills in a fun manner, and the student engagement is very high. They're adorable, and we're learning and growing all together. So it's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Beeger.
Yeah, thank you. This was a really wonderful presentation, and it's exciting for me. The video in the beginning was wonderful. I was unable to go to that school visit, so your video really brought to life what the classroom looks like. I love that, coupled with how you shared the schedule for the pre-K day, and I am sure that that's shared with families as well, so they can see what their little ones are doing when they're first leaving for a school experience like this. I love seeing the play built in there too, so it doesn't feel like a scary academic experience, more learning through that play. And how wonderful to hear the Lucy Calkins curriculum through reading workshops, so that transition when they come to school doesn't feel so different. It's something that they've already practiced. My question actually has to do with that transition when our UPK students do move to kindergarten. You mentioned the assessment that we have, the programs that we have the kids take, and I understand that that screening is part of a mandate we need to do with the UPK. How are those results or that information shared when these children move into our Williamsville schools for kindergarten? I know there's a separate kindergarten screening process. Is this information shared with teams to help with, classroom distribution or any of that matter, or is it just stay at pre-K?
So the information is actually shared and follows the students to their elementary building in kindergarten. But the kindergarten screening is done separate of everything that they've had regarding pre-K. So the pre-K information that we do with assessments is really part of the grant funding that needs to be sent to the state to ensure that the progress is being made with our delivery of our instruction, and showing them like factual evidence on how our students are progressing with the program to ensure that our grant funding is continued from year to year.
That makes sense.
Is that data compared? Like the end of the year UPK, would that be compared with what's tested over the summer for kindergarten? I'm just curious because I'm thinking of a child that might have an established relationship with their UPK teacher, feel really comfortable, as opposed to them being a little scared for their kindergarten screening.
Yeah, so we typically do kindergarten screenings in the spring, so around May. At that point, we don't have the UPK final results yet. We typically get those over the summer. We do cross-reference just to see if there was something that we've missed. It's really important that we still continue our kindergarten screening to get a sense of the child, so our teachers can work with them, so we can make great placements to match children with teachers. And we use the data, of course, that we do learn from how their school year went in order to further our instruction, to make sure that we're grouping students appropriately, that we know what the students come in with, what knowledge they have, and what we need to work on next. So it's all useful and it's all used, but data is an ongoing process. It's not just we've screened, now we move on. You're always rescreening children. We're always analyzing data, and we're always making great decisions to support our kids.
I'm so thrilled to hear that because, and that was the reason I asked that question. When we give an assessment out of compliance, we're following the rules, but when we're actually using that for meaningful reasons, especially looking towards the next year, it's wonderful to hear. Lastly, I just want to say, as a parent whose child has gone through UPK in Williamsville, we were so happy with the program for our son, and I just appreciate the timeline, the transparency. Our first school experience, especially when a child is that young, can be scary or daunting for a parent. So thank you for all your work and your organization with us.
Thank you.
Anybody else on my left with questions? Ms. Pullen?
Yeah, Mr. Scanzuzo, I might have misheard, but I thought I heard you say something about having UPK in all of our buildings. Is that a goal that you have moving beyond Forest and Country Parkway, or did I misunderstand?
That'd be a wonderful goal. The issue has to do with space. Having Country Parkway and Forest are the two buildings that were selected because they have classroom space. It'd be very difficult to have UPK classes at each one of our elementary buildings because of that. And not to say that it's something that's not in our, won't be in the future, but space is really a consideration that we're looking at when expanding any program in district.
That'd be wonderful.
And the funding piece. I mean, it's obviously, it's what we're paying our instructors as opposed to the CBOs having, their people who they're hiring who do a wonderful job and are just as dedicated as our staff members. So, again, I can't reiterate the fact that the programs are consistent across the board at all 7 locations.
Yes, and I want to thank my board colleagues for answering or asking all the good questions. So I saved myself one. And I want to thank all of you for your presentation and information. So not to be redundant, I just asked one question. How will you evaluate how successful this program has been for individual students and as a transition into kindergarten? You may not have that answer, but that's something that I would want to know a bit more about.
Yeah, we are required, because it's grant funded, we are required to do a final report to the state. So for the last dozen years or so, I've done that at the end of the school year, where we need to look at the screening data, the initial Brigance inventory, what the students' progress was when we provided the screening and the inventory again at the end of the year to look to see what was the growth and the progress of the students, not only by student, but by classroom at each of the CBOs. So we've done that for many years. It is a requirement, but also, the state wants to know, are you running a good program and are the students making progress? But we also work very closely with the CBOs these many years, where we hold monthly staff development for them. And we've talked to them about how to use the data, how to use it for instructional strategies and moving students forward and all of that. So they're very well aware of how important the data is right along. So they can even see when they re-administer the screenings and the Brigance inventory again, they can look and say, wow, because they actually know what the data means, with the percentiles and things like that for the growth. But we do look at that because we do have to file a report at the end of the year to the state to say, has there been no growth, minimal growth, substantial growth? We have to provide that in a rating scale that the state requires. So we do look at that.
Awesome.
And I just have one question. You did mention there was no sibling preference for families, but if they have multiples, so if they have twins or triplets, is there a sibling preference in that situation?
We've had many families with twins and triplets over the years. Absolutely. We need to treat each child as an individual child. So there can't be a preference for families only because we are so limited in the placements we have. So if you have over 500 children eligible, but you only have 284 placements and you're doing a lottery, it wouldn't be fair if we didn't try to be consistent across that every child is their own individual person within the lottery process. We've been pretty lucky for the most part out of probably, 20 or 30 twins or triplets we've had in the last 5 years, sets of twins and triplets that almost, I would say 85 to 90% the children have gotten in. All the siblings have gotten in. So we've been very lucky that way, but we truly run it as a random lottery. So, and parents know that right up front. If we see that there's twins or triplets, we make sure we reach out to those families. And we do have it in the initial letter that the families receive that each child is an individual.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. And thank you so much for this presentation.
I just have one more. It popped up after. I'm making you guys up there forever. I'm sorry. I just enjoy hearing these things. This is what we're on the board to hear about, the achievements of programs like this that help our students. So Mr. Scanzu, you kind of answered what popped into my head. So at CBOs, they're employees of that
CBO
place, establishment. Yes. Okay. Business. And in the district, they're part of Williamsville's, correct? Yeah. And I believe I knew that. So you did mention in terms of professional development, making sure that the teachers at the CBOs are aligned with what's going on at Country Parkway and Forest. Is there ever like checking in throughout the day, or I don't want to say, what's the word? Yes. Yeah. I don't want to say you're like,
no, absolutely. Our
over
UPK
them, but
consultant that Mr. Scanzuzo referred to early on through the grant, that person is our conduit to make sure that things are going. She is in the CBOs. She's there at least once a week in every one. We email constantly. We're always back and forth with information. If we need to meet with parents, her and I go to the site. We spot check, so to speak. When I can go and I have a few minutes or on the way into work or on the way home, whatever, I will just stop in, and they all know that. They're all welcoming. They don't have a problem with it. They've been wonderful. Our CBOs have just been outstanding. Are there sometimes that issues come up? Yes, but they work with us to address any issues that we have. But yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to ask that, not for
very involved.
Yeah,
and yep.
Not for the professionals. More or less, I think it's important for our community and our family members who are thinking about this to hear that you guys seem to be running a good ship.
That is the sole purpose of our UPK consultant, to be our conduit, to make sure that there's continuous transparency and understanding of expectations and performance.
And that consultant is a former school psychologist, so she's very in tune with, what kids need, seeing progress, and using her professional background to make a lot of inferences and determinations and forecasting what students' needs are and how to support them. They're like the boots on the ground for all of our sites.
Thank you very much for all of your dedication and for all this information tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Members of the board, I'm going on to committee of the whole. Are there any matters to discuss under that item 19, committee of the whole? All right, seeing none. 20 is correspondence. We did receive some letters about seating in the auditorium for music performances. And we received a few letters about masks under COVID, and a few letters from our school nurses asking for some compassion for the difficulties in their job during the pandemic and in supports. Anyone wish to make any comments regarding our correspondences? Thank you. At this time, may I have a motion to recess the regular board meeting for the purpose of conducting the budget work session? Thank you, Dr. Littman and Ms. Poulin. All in favor? All hands up equals motion carries unanimously. All right, we have recessed. And now I'm calling the budget session to order. All board members are still present. We had some good discussion earlier in our regular board meeting regarding the budget presentation. Does anyone have anything additional to add to the budget presentation before we begin our public forum? All right, thank you. We will now have our public forum for the budget only. Anyone wishing to address the board in regard to the budget may go to the podium at this time.
Hope nobody gets trampled on the way.
Anyone?
Thought Mr. Maturski was going to ask a question.
All right, I don't see anyone. Those at home watching the YouTube video, there was information previously in the meeting with a slide that had how you can send feedback. There is an email address available to send feedback specifically on the budget.
Correct.
All right, thank you. All right, so at this time, would someone like to make a motion to adjourn the budget work session? Thank you, Vice President Van Cise and Dr. McCleary. All in favor to adjourn and return back to Oz. Okay, thank you. All in favor, motion carries unanimously. So we are now back in our regular board session. I have to have a motion to get back there. Would you like to make a motion to return? Thank you, Ms. Beeger and Ms. Poulin. All in favor?
Do it.
Thank you. Hands up. Now we are returning. Now we're here, but you'd never know you left.
We were lost.
Next regular board meeting is Tuesday, March 8th. Is there a motion to please adjourn?
Before we do, may I say something? I just want to wish everyone a safe midwinter recess and also a happy, informative, educational Black History Month.
Love it. Thank you very much. Is there a motion to adjourn the regular board meeting? Thank you, Vice President Van Cise and Mr. Bisceglia. All in favor? All hands up equals motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Be safe and have a good night.
Always,